good morning. Welcome to lesson 4, all about animation. Now, the first thing to say, if you sort of look really closely at the blog, you'll notice there's been a slight switch around because I did have lesson 4 down as claymation, but I've changed my mind. We're going to be doing the circle of motion today because actually I think it makes more sense. So apologies if you're looking for that, or you may not have noticed that they were mysteriously swapped in the day this week. So welcome to week 4. We're going to be looking at the circle of motion. Last week we were looking at flip books. All of these things are early animation techniques, and I've loved seeing the flip books that people have sent me. So well done for having a go at those. Hello, I should say hello to everyone joining us as well. I can see lots of you joining us. We're going to think about flip books to start with. I've got various pictures, and what I want you to think about is what would be a cool animation, like a flip book style animation about these items. So, or are these things? Some of them are items, some of them are things. So the first one is a rabbit. So what would be quite a cool kind of flip book animation that you could use with a rabbit as the sort of subject? That's the word I'm looking for. I can't get my words out today. So it could be a hopping bunny, for example, but that maybe isn't that exciting. What could the bunny be doing? Maybe the bunny's going on an Easter egg hunt, and the flip book shows them picking up an egg, or magicking an egg from the ground. That would be a cool flip book. What else could they be doing? With lovely ideas. Yeah, you could have them maybe doing this with their ears, couldn't you? You could have sort of various ear movements or little ear dance. That would be quite cool. What's the next one? Now, knife and fork. Now, that's an odd one. What sort of flip book animation could you do with a knife and fork? Maybe they could be eating your favourite dinner, and you could see just have the knife and fork, and then the dinner slowly disappearing. That would be quite a cool idea. Or maybe your knife and fork could dress up and do a dance. That would be quite cool. That's a tricky one, isn't it? Maybe it could just be the knife and fork falling off the table, or having a wash and a splash about in the washing up bowl. That's a tricky one, isn't it? But you can make animations out of anything. What about a toothbrush? See, I was thinking about the toothbrush. We often use toothbrushes for other things. So we've used toothbrushes as a paintbrush. I often use toothbrushes to clean our plug holes, which old toothbrushes, but I think our toothbrushes might feel a bit sad about that. So they could be maybe leaving, the animation could be them leaving home with a little backpack because they don't like being used for painting and cleaning out plugs. It could just be an animation of somebody's teeth being brushed and them going from really yucky to really sparkly clean. It could be some marching toothbrushes, because we've got quite a few toothbrushes there, haven't we? We could have lots of marching toothbrushes. That would be quite cool. Now, what about chocolates? What sort of flip book animation could you do about chocolate? Now, don't forget, if you want more time, you could even sit and draw some of these ideas out. You can always pause me if you think I go too quickly. Now, there's a big bite out of this chocolate. I think what would be quite cool is for the bar of chocolate to gradually get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller till it's like a little teeny tiny crumb. That would be quite a fun animation. And who wouldn't want a flip book animation about chocolate? Now, what about wellies? I do like a pair of wellies. What could the wellies be doing? Now, one thing we did when my children were very little and their wellies, they grew out of their wellies, we planted some plants in wellies. So that's one flip book. It could be about a little plant growing out of a welly, which would be quite cool. Could be wellies splashing, couldn't it, in a puddle. It could be people putting on the wellies. That could be another one, although that might be a bit boring. But lots of ideas. So hopefully that's got us started thinking about different animations. What we're going to look at today is a zoetrope. And all of those ideas that we've come up with at the beginning that could be used as a flip book could also be used to make a zoetrope. So my first question is, what is a zoetrope? And loads of you know I like looking at where words come from. So if you kind of split up the words and work out what the two main parts are, Zoe is one. Now that's obviously, it can be somebody's name, but not in this instance. And then we have trope. Now, we've come across trope a few times with some other inventions. So it's obviously something to do with animation. So what do you think it is? Zoe and trope. Did Zoe create it? Does anybody know what Zoe might mean? Does anybody actually know what a zoetrope is? Because if you know what a zoetrope is, then what it would make it a bit easier to try and work out. I definitely think trope means movement, because we've come across the word trope before. So not quite sure about Zoe. That's quite tricky. If you're called Zoe, you might know what the meaning of Zoe is, which would make it a bit easier. So Zoe actually means life, which is why it's kind of like a very popular name, because obviously our children are very important to us. So Zoe is actually Greek, the Greek word for life, and trope means not movement, but something that turns. So if you went for movement, you were almost correct. So basically, what a zoetrope is something that turns and shows you life. And life could be very broad, but shows you something through its spinning. So a zoetrope, this is a zoetrope. This is what a zoetrope looks like. You can see inside, can you see there's lots of little pictures? Now those pictures are exactly the same as you would draw on a flip book. So if you cut all those pictures up and you flipped them, you would see motion. But a zoetrope is actually a spinning disc, and it works much better than a flip book. So it's almost one step on from a flip book. Now in 1834, British mathematician William Horner developed this spinning drum. So it's basically a drum, a circular drum. It's got slits in it. He didn't name it the zoetrope. Interestingly, he labelled it or named it the Daedalum. Now, if you've ever heard of Daedalus, Daedalus was a Greek myth, and so he called it a Daedalum. But basically, after he died, and he didn't die, he died quite quickly after, a bit like the chap that invented the flip book. He passed away in 1837, so quite soon after inventing the Daedalum, and people basically renamed it the zoetrope. They thought that was a more fitting name. And he didn't live to see how influential his invention would become. It's basically a drum. It spins. The outside of the drum contains slits, and inside the drum, you look through the slits, and inside the drum is the sequence of pictures. And when the drum is spun, you see movement. Works exactly the same as all the other things that we've done. It's to do with the persistence of vision. Now, I went and started looking up zoetropes because I thought they were quite cool. And I found out about the Crystal Palace zoetrope. So the Crystal Palace zoetrope was installed in a concert hall and it was installed in 1867, so the Victorian times. And it was powered by a gas engine, so they didn't spin it by hand. It was actually powered by an engine. But what made it so incredible was that it was 15 metres, this cylinder, wide. And it featured life-size characters on the inside. So visitors would stand there, look through the slits in the drum. The drum would move, powered by an engine, and people would be able to see these large figures moving. And this was the sort of first time we've ever seen like what you would call immersive animation. So this is one step on really from a flipbook. When you go to the cinema and you watch an animated film, you're immersed in the action. It sort of takes you with it, doesn't it? And this Crystal Palace Zoetrope did exactly that. It was so big you could stand there, you could look at it, you could see these life-size people inside moving. And it was the first sort of time that people had experienced immersive animation. Now, how do you think people felt seeing something like this for the very first time? Now, if we look at this tiny little drum here, this little tiny blue drum, is about the size of a normal zoetrope, and this is in sort of what is it called, perspective. This is how big a person would be to the zoetrope. Now, shall I show you how big in perspective compared to a person the Crystal Palace Zoetrope was? This is how big it was. So this is to scale. So this person could obviously pick this Zoetrope up and spin it. But the Crystal Palace Zoetrope, look how big it is compared to an average sized person. Now, how do you think people felt seeing something like this? I wish that we'd still had something like this. I'd definitely go and see it. Seeing life-size drawings move, I think would be incredible. And don't forget, this will be the first time people have seen anything like this. So I expect some people thought it was magic, but then very quickly after would have been shown how it works. So it was a really good education piece, because people originally might have thought it was magic, but people then realised how it worked. It was a really good way of people seeing animation and immersing themselves in it. But I reckon some people are probably a bit scared of it as well, because it's pretty big, isn't it? So let's have a little go at thinking of some true, playing a true and false game. So if I spun a zoetrope and my zoetrope was a walking person, if I spun it the wrong way, so rather than spinning it clockwise, I spin it anti-clockwise, the person will walk backwards into a wall. What do you think? So if I spin a zoetrope of a walking person the wrong way, they'll walk backwards into a wall. Do we think that's true, or do we think that sounds like a pile of nonsense? Well, I'm sure that I can't trick you. Just waiting for some answers to come in. Unless there's a wall in the picture, of course they're not going to be walking backwards into a wall. There'd actually have to be a wall in the picture to start with. Now, one of the first animated images in a zoetrope was a chicken doing a little dance. Do you think that's true, or do you think that's false? So one of the first animated zoetropes was a chicken doing a little dance. Maybe it did this. Not sure what it did. It'd be pretty fun. What do we think? Well, the answer is true. So it was a little chicken doing a little dance. That sounds like quite a cool zoetrope. A zoetrope only works if the pictures show small changes from one frame to the next. So it needs to be just like a flip book. It needs to just have little pictures and they need to show small changes. Well, we've all got this one because we've been doing animation now for 4 weeks. It's absolutely true. Of course it is. If you have big changes, your brain can't blend them together, so it wouldn't work. Victorian children thought the zoetrope was a magic trick. So the answer was they didn't. They might have the very first time they saw it, but when it was explained to them, the whole purpose of having this huge zoetrope was to teach and show people how the science worked. Queen Victoria's husband was incredibly into science, so children wouldn't have come away thinking it was all a magic trick. They would have understood. The giant zoetrope at Crystal Palace was so big it needed a gas engine to spin. Now, can we remember, is that true or is that false? It was true. Now, what we're going to do in this session, or is this session is going to be slightly shorter because you are going to hopefully go away and make your own zoetrope. So I have a zoetrope here. Now, I ummed about whether I made this with you live or whether I just made it and showed it to you. And in the end, I decided that I would make it ahead of time because sometimes it's a bit boring watching somebody make something. And secondly, I either go too fast or too slow for people. Now, this template you can find on the blog in the link to the description below or to the side of this video. Inside there are I've gone for the ones with birds, so you can see that there's slight changes in each of the birds, and this has already been done for me. Now there is a jumping frog, which you may recognize from last week because that's where I got the frog from my flip book. There is also some horses running, a horse running, and there's also a plain one for you to do yourself. So if you go back to what we started with the rabbit and the knife and fork and the chocolate, you could use that as a sort of inspiration rather to do your own. Now I'm going to go through how to make it. The first thing to say is the instructions say that you need a paper plate. You don't need a paper plate. I just used a piece of cardboard that I folded in half to make a big platform. The second thing to say is when I printed mine, mainly because I'm tight with my printing because my children print off so much, I printed my zoetrope so that it was 2 pages per 1 page of A4. The other reason I did it is because I thought it would be slightly more stable, but it's entirely up to you because this is a small one. If you print it on A4, this is going to work out bigger than my one, but I did 2 sheets to 1 A4 sheet of paper, if that makes sense. And what you do is you print it off, and it prints it off as 2 strips, and you stick the 2 strips together. And then what you do, so I've stuck my 2 strips together, then you fold it in half and you cut out the sections that you're going to see. You can see there's a dotted line, so it's really simple. You just fold the dotted line, cut out the holes for you to see through, and then you glue it down, and then you join 2 sides together to make a cylinder. And then what I did, as I said, it says to use a paper plate, but I didn't. I just used a bit of an old cereal box, and then you put a pencil into the bottom of it, and then you stick, I just used some masking tape, you stick it to the side, and then you look through the hole, and then you spin it, and then you see the bird or the horse. Now I'm going to try really hard to show you it. Hopefully it will work. I'm going to start my pencil all the way up here. Are you ready? Well, I wonder if I could do it that way. That's better. Can you see it? Now, I did read, somebody said, and I don't recommend this necessarily unless you're grown-ups, but if you've got a record player, because they're kind of coming back, aren't they? Apparently you can put it, don't put a record on, but you can actually put it on the turntable and spin it. It's quite cool though. That's like, if you can get it moving quite quickly. You almost need to keep going. I need to almost keep going up my arm, so I've only got so much stretch. Ready? Hang on. That was a rubbish one. Ready? That was also a rubbish one. You see it? So cool. I could literally do this for ages. Let me give this to my son because he sometimes gets grumpy. I think this is a good stress toy to like do. So there we go. So there's the Zoetrope. As I said, it's really, it's not fiddly. It just takes a little bit of time. There's some step-by-step instructions for you to make it, and you can make lots of them. As I said, I've got the one with the birds, but you can make your own. There's one on there which has got a template for you to make your own. Now we're going to play another game. I've got a very unusual word that I am going to try and get you to guess, and I'm going to release the letters one at a time, but they're going to be a random order. Ooh. Now, I think anybody got it. In fact, you might be going, what on earth is a praxinoscope? Have you ever heard of a praxinoscope? Now you'll be like, Chrissy, you just told me about a zoetrope. Now you're talking about a praxinoscope. What on earth is a praxinoscope? Well, a praxinoscope is the next step on from a zoetrope. So a praxinoscope was invented in 1877 by Charles Emile Raynaud. He was a French scientist, but he was also a bit of a showman. And this is basically how you take the zoetrope and how you make it even better. Now, the point of the zoetrope is that you have to look through these slits, and there's a slight break in your vision because your eyes are having the vision broken by these slits. And so he was a bit like, how can I do this so that I don't have this slight break, because it makes the animation juddery. So as you spin your zoetrope, your animation is a little bit juddery. And so what he decided was, rather than do it like this with slits, he would instead have a ring of mirrors in the middle of a zoetrope. So rather than looking through here, you would look in the mirror instead. And so he would have this ring of mirrors, and he would have it in the middle of the zoetrope. And so the ring of mirrors sits in the center of the drum, and he has a mirror facing each individual one of these pictures. And then as the drum spins, you're looking in the mirror, and it basically gives a smooth, flicker-free animation. So it's much brighter, much clearer than a zoetrope. And so this is sort of one step on. This is called a praxinoscope. This is, as I said, a bit like a zoetrope, but the next stage up. Now you can get like mirrored tape, can't you? So if you really are like very much into science, you could have a go at making a praxinoscope. Now you'd probably need to make it in A4 size, not A5 size like mine, but you could get maybe a toilet roll, or probably would be better the inside of a what they're called, kitchen roll, that's the word, because they're a bit tougher, aren't they? But you could almost see if you could make a praxinoscope if you're proper into science and tinkering at home, and see what works better, a zoetrope or a praxinoscope. So I purposely left this one short because I really do want you to go and make a Zoetrope, because honestly, they give you so much pleasure for something so simple. I'm not that keen on crafts, I have to be honest. I mean, I do lots of them for you guys, and I do lots of them with my kids, but I have to say I absolutely love this one. It's really, really cool. So do go and check the World Learners Animation blog. There you will find a link in the description to be able to download this. There's also lots of other lovely activities that you can do as well that I've popped on there. And so do go and share your Zoetrops. And if you make a Praxinoscope as well, over on our Facebook group, have a lovely week. Before you go, next week we are going to be doing claymation. So we're going to be taking animation that little bit further. And for that, you are going to need some sort of modelling clay, some sort of modelling clay of some description. You can make your own with, I can't think how you make it, but it's sort of flour and, like salt dough. You could use it, make sort of salt dough, or if you've got any sort of modelling clay. If you don't, you could always bring some. If you don't, it's a little bit hard, but you could always bring some building block figures. You could do it with that instead if you wanted. But next week, you're going to need either some little figures or some modelling clay of some sort for next week's session. And I'm going to introduce you to my little worm, because that's my clay worm with his nice goggly eyes. So that's the other thing you might want to think about if you're going to make something out of modelling clay. What other things might you need? So I've got 2 goggly eyes to poke into mine. So have a lovely, lovely week, and I will see you soon. Oh, and the other thing to say is obviously you're going to need to be buying your grown-ups camera if you don't have a mobile telephone. But yes, we'll talk more about that next week. So have a lovely week. Enjoy making your Zoetropes. Do share them with me. I love to see them. Have a lovely week, and I'll see you soon.